Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really critical cybersecurity threat. And the crazy thing is, it doesn't need some complex, fancy exploit. All it needs is one single, overlooked setting. We're talking about AS-REQ roasting.
So let's just kick things off with a question that gets right to the heart of this whole thing. What if an attacker could steal a user's password hash without any credentials at all, without ever logging in? Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what AS-RP roasting makes possible. You see, this entire attack hinges on a very specific misconfiguration. It's like a small crack in what's supposed to be the secure foundation of any Windows network, Active Directory. So what is AS-RP roasting, really? Well, you can think of it as an attack where someone basically tricks a server into just handing over a user's encrypted password hash. And this is only possible because they've found an account where a really key security check has been switched off.
And here's the part that's so wild. This isn't some zero-day exploit or a complicated software bug we're talking about. It's literally a security feature that an administrator has intentionally disabled. Now, why would they do that? Usually, it's to support some old legacy application that just can't keep up with modern security protocols.
That feature is called Kerberos Pre-Authentication, or KPA for short. Here's a good way to think about it. Imagine you go to a bank. Before the teller gives you a locked cash box, they ask to see your ID, right? They need to prove you are who you say you are. KPA is that ID check. And if it's turned off, the server just hands over that locked box to pretty much anyone who asks for it. Okay, so how does an attacker actually exploit this? Let's walk through their playbook, step by step, and see how this heist goes down. Honestly, the whole process is deceptively simple. First, the attacker just scans the network, looking for any user accounts where that KPA ID check is disabled. Then they simply ask the server for an authentication ticket for that user, and since that ID check is off, the server just complies and sends back a response that contains the user's password hash, all nicely encrypted. The attacker now has the prize. It's that easy. And this table perfectly illustrates the difference between AS-REQ roasting and a similar attack you might have heard of called Kerberos roasting. Now look closely at that required access row. That's the whole ballgame. For Kerberos roasting, an attacker has to already be an authenticated user inside the network. But for AS-REQ roasting, they need absolutely nothing. They can be a complete outsider, which makes this a terrifyingly effective way to get that initial foothold. So the attacker has the encrypted hash. Now we get to the most dangerous part of the attack. They take that stolen data completely off your network, and that's where they begin the cracking process. And this is why it's so incredibly damaging. You know, if an attacker tries to guess a password on your live network, that's online cracking, it's super noisy. It triggers alarms, it locks out accounts, but by taking the hash offline, they can use powerful computers to try millions, even billions of password combinations a second, and you won't see a thing. It is fast, it is silent, and they get unlimited attempts. If they succeed, and they often do, the consequences are severe. They might get the user's actual password in plain text. Or they can use the hash itself in something called a pass-the-hash attack, which lets them log in as the user without ever even knowing the password. Either way, they now have a foothold to move through your network, escalate their privileges, and maybe even compromise the entire domain. And what makes this problem even worse is old technology. If the account they compromised is still using a weak, outdated encryption standard like RC4, the time it takes to crack that password just plummets. I mean, what might have taken months of computing power can suddenly be done in just hours, or sometimes even minutes. So yeah, that's pretty scary stuff. But now that we understand the threat, how do we defend against it? The good news is the solutions are actually pretty straightforward and they are extremely effective. Security researchers over at Rapid7 laid out the defensive playbook perfectly. It really boils down to a three-pronged strategy. Fix the bad configuration, enforce a strong password policy, and then just continuously monitor. The single most important thing you can do is eliminate the vulnerability right at the source. You have to find every single user account that has Kerberos Pre-Authentication disabled and turn it back on. This one change slams the door shut on this entire attack. Next up, you absolutely need a strong password policy. This is your safety net. Because even if an attacker somehow gets their hands on a hash, a long, complex password makes that offline cracking process incredibly difficult and time-consuming, often to the point where it just isn't practical for them anymore. And finally, this can't be a one-time fix. You have to be continuously auditing your Active Directory environment. This makes sure that this misconfiguration doesn't just pop up again later for a new application or when a new admin makes a change. You got to keep those defenses strong over time. But what if you're worried an attack is already happening, or maybe it's happened in the past? Let's take a look at how you can find the digital footprints that this kind of attacker leaves behind. Your alarm system for this attack isn't some big flashing red lights. No, it's buried deep inside the security event logs on your domain controllers. The trick is just knowing what to look for. And the key is knowing exactly what to hunt for in all that data. You're looking for event ID 4768. That's a request for a Kerberos ticket. But the smoking gun, the absolute definitive proof of an attack, is when that event has a pre-authentication type of 0. That 0 value is what confirms the security check was bypassed. That's your signal. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The huge risk from AS-REQ roasting doesn't come from some brilliant, sophisticated piece of malware. It comes from a simple, administrative choice to turn off a fundamental security control. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Building strong walls around your network is absolutely essential, but it's not enough. Real security means you have to go inside and check the lock on every single door. Because as we've just seen, attackers are always looking for that one door that's been left wide open.